Bruce followed Charles as he drove to heaven knows where, when suddenly he turned and pulled over by the roadside of a church. He was surprised that Charles ended up in a church. The crowd was immense, as evidenced by the number of cars packed outside. The parking lot was already full, forcing other cars to park outside. Bruce needed to give accurate information to John, so he packed and went inside, but the only space he got was beside Charles. He watched him all through the teaching and saw how the man was crying all through. The teachings were hitting Bruce so hard that he wanted to run away, but when he looked around, the people were so glued that any movement would look out of place. He heard the pastor talking about his out-of-body experience, to the point where he started crying as heaven cried in chorus. Bruce felt caged, and found himself fighting against the resurrection of his conscience. To him, killing had become a second nature. He hardly winked at committing murder, but suddenly the more he sat in that church, the more he felt like running out to confess his sin. Bruce knew he would do something he would regret if he should continue to sit and listen to the pastor any further. So quietly he slipped out. He went and sat in the car, but that did not help either, as all the pastor said kept playing in his mind. He regretted entering the church in the first place, but he needed to know what Charles was doing, so that he would know their next line of action and what to report to John. He called John for his opinion as he sat in the car. The last thing he would ever say was that he was tempted to repent. "Hello, boss." "Hello, Bruce. Where are you?" he inquired, as Bruce never calls except there is an emergency. "I followed him to a church," he said, wondering what his reply would be. "Church?" He could sense a tone out of place in his boss's. "Yes, church, and I think he is repenting because he has been crying ever since the pastor was preaching." "Are you serious?" "Yes, boss. I had to leave before I end up on my knees on the altar, so I don't know what else is happening in there. Find out. The last thing we need is him going to spill everything before a preacher." "Okay, boss, but..." The line went dead. The note in the voice of John warned him he was not pleased by the report, but he had to give the report all the same. Bruce went back into the church, and to his amazement, Charles was on his knees at the altar, still weeping his heart out. He watched as many more went to surrender their lives to God. Silently, he went back to his car and waited till late after everyone had gone. He saw Charles in the company of the pastor walking to his car, and after a hug, the two men parted and Charles drove home. Bruce drove behind him until he drove into his parking lot and he zoomed off.